you grew up in Israel as an Arab.
Yep.
And with a Muslim family and an African background. Now that's a lot right there.
It's a beautiful mess.
Yes, yes. Beautiful chaos. Can you speak freely as to, can you talk about just how that experience has been for you? I mean, especially being in Israel and then coming to America with the social constructs of Black and white and things like that. I mean, just how Tamer spoke earlier about, hey, we were the core and I was just a Jew and I was just being, and then in LA, it's these guys that, you know, how does that translate for you?
Well, I'll be honest. Since I was born and grew up in the Middle East, my perspective on let's say social issues or anything related to that come from that angle. So when I came to the U.S., let me go back for a second.
Sure.
So I was born in Israel. That's correct. I was born in a Bedouin community when I was in 1997. And for the listeners, of those who don't understand what is a Bedouin community, think of us as nomadic Arab tribes who used to, still is, to some extent, wander and live in basically the desert. And our way of survival is by going to one water source to another water source with all these, with our families, and live in tents. This is what we used. This is what my grandfather used to do. This is what his father used to do up until that point.
Some Americans may refer to that as like gypsies or something like that. Or just
exactly, to an extent, yeah. Some Americans might understand that if they look at Dubai, for example, they see the thobe and the traditional Arab outfit. This is what Bedouin customs and where we wear as well. Yeah. And growing up in Israel, I'd say that the vast majority, I wouldn't say only, but the vast majority of let's say prejudice or racism that came towards my way was mostly from my own community, from my Arab community, from my Muslim community, from my Bedouin community. Not because necessarily people were racist or people saw me differently and wanted to hate on me or my family members, but two reasons. One, the Black community inside the Arab society is very small. Not a lot of us, but there are many of us. That being said, if you go back to the history of Black Arabs, you see that the majority of us are a product of the Arab/Muslim slave trade that spanned for almost 1,300 years, Pastor, right? If I'm correct.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and from all over North Africa, Central Africa to the Middle East, we were dragged. There were no boats. We walked all the way from Central Africa, North Africa to the Middle East, traded, used for war and stuff like that. So even my mother's maiden name, all right, I told the story plenty of time. My mother's maiden name in Arabic is Al-Abid, which is roughly translated to the slaves, right? So where I come from, I've seen a lot of prejudice coming towards my way because of the skin color, mostly because of my skin color and my African heritage. It didn't come from Jews, it came from people who spoke the same language that I speak, my native Arabic language. And as a kid, that was very upsetting. And I was like, why? You guys tell me that I should hate Jews, but also tell me that I'm not equal like you guys because I have a different skin color. I mean, at least the Jews don't treat me as a second-class citizen or third-class citizen. This is me as a kid. So a lot of it was of my mindset was shaped during that. That being said, never experienced prejudice in Israel from Jews or the Zionists, or like people like to call them. I worked in the Israeli Knesset for a while. I worked for a journal called Haaretz, if anybody know of it. For a while, I was an educator. Never really felt that kind of prejudice coming from the Israeli society overall. So to come to move from Israel to come here and see that a lot of things are looked upon and looked through from the lenses of race, ethnicity, stuff like that. For me, it felt confusing. For example, one of the courses that we had, we talked about how to navigate questions and conversations surrounding race in the workplace and what to do when people come and ask you, oh, where are you from? Are your parents originally from here and stuff like that? And I was like, well, this is very weird. I mean, I want to come here and work and get paid and take my bread and go back home. That's pretty much it. I don't want to sit and talk about put my skin color on the table and have it to be as the main topic of discussion, because I don't think that is something that I'm interested in. which for me it feels like sometimes there is. And again, I don't feel the right person to say this because I'm not American, but sometimes it feels like there's a lot of, I would say, way too much focus on looking through things through the lenses of race, understandably so, given the history of the country and everything that has happened here. But for me, coming from a different culture in which slavery still exists till now, and we never had Martin Luther King or the civil rights movement or people coming out and taking us through the streets and, march for your rights and all that. We never had that, so it still exists. So for me, it feels like you guys talking about this like, something that happened.
Right.
But for many of us outside of the U.S., we look at it still happening. Yes. We still have it. So it's a different experience, I would say.
Now, you've been a journalist and a student activist, trying to tell your personal story to students and online since October 7th, the devastating day. Now, do you feel like people are listening, or do you feel like your personal experience is are they trying to essentially erase your personal experience? Now, have you received any backlash for coming forward and telling your story?
Well, I'd say what drove me to go online and start speaking and talking, and anybody can see what I've been doing on my handles, Tamer Masudin. One of the things that drove me to do that was the horrific massacre that occurred on October 7th. I wasn't interested really in doing social media work. I wasn't interested in being this guy who talks to his phone every morning, and talk to himself. But what happened on the 7th of October was that were also people from inside of my community, that the Bedouin community that were affected. Hostages were taken, people were killed and kidnapped, and for me it felt like nobody's mentioning and talking about these stories, and everybody's on the fog of war, everybody's is confused. So I wanted to talk about this, and I also saw a lot of lies being told about my country and also about me. I'm one of the 20% Arab who live in Israel, and to see so many lies being told in my name about me, I'm like, wait, who told you that I live in an apartheid country? Come on, like I just sat down with the doctor, my doctor's an Arab, his nurse is Jewish, and I sat down, got treated by both of them, and I'm on my way back home to my Jewish partner. So where this whole apartheid thing came from? So I started speaking online. I started talking in mostly on social media, then slowly interviews, and slowly did that. At the beginning, I would say I received a lot of backlash. The backlash didn't come from my community. From when I say my community, I mean from my family, my brothers, my sisters. It didn't come from that. It didn't come from Jews or the Israeli society. It came mostly from Middle Easterners. Sadly, I received a lot of racial abuse. I don't think people that I know of who work in the same sphere have been seeing that kind of abuse. I've been called a slave. I've been called many things. I had people sending me death threats, saying, "Well, how can you, as a black person in Arabic, right? How can you, as a black person, come and support these Zionists and what they do?" And I'm like, well, if you look at me and say that I'm black, well, I assume that you're operating under the premise that black people can only think and behave and act in a certain way,
right?
Which makes you a racist, not me. But that being said, I noticed that it comes a lot from, sadly, from my Arab community. Not all of it, but most of it came from that. I wasn't really deterred. For me, it felt like I'm doing something right. For me, it felt like if there's overwhelmingly 80% support that I get and only 20% of hate and slurs and stuff like that, it's like, well, it's a price I'm willing to pay, because I think there have been greater and far more influential men than me who've been on these stages and got threatened and got sent bomb threats and horrible things that happened to them, and all of them decided to speak up. And I said, well, I can only be told because I'll stand on the shoulders of giants, so I should also speak up and not let this to be something that stops there.
Can you speak to some of the support you've received as well?
Yeah.
Does the love outweigh the hate?
The love 100% outweigh the hate. Yeah, 100%. I would say that I received a lot of love from my own community, from my Bedouin community, because once October 7th happened, a lot of Bedouin volunteers, Israeli Bedouin volunteers, who went in to help open their homes for Israeli Jewish people who had to flee their homes because they were burned or bombed or whatever. They opened their homes to come, and which was I was upset that day because I thought to myself, well, how come nobody's talking about this in the media? We've been talking about, here's the Jews and the Arabs are fighting and killing each other. And I'm like, well, this is a great example of, Jews and Arabs working together, in this case, to save each other and save lives. And sadly, it wasn't talked about in the media. I think there was between 12 or 13 Bedouin members who were commemorated by our president Herzog for their bravery and saving lives during the first days. A lot of them, yeah, and not a lot of it wasn't talked about in the media, and it wasn't talked about by other people. And I'm like, well, I have to bring these stories up.
Right.
I have to be the one to do that because, well, again, because if people all they hear is Al Jazeera and other network affiliated networks talking about how Zionists are white and evil and do all of this, and they don't hear these kind of stories, of course, this is everything that they're gonna think.
Yes, absolutely. And, kudos to you for being brave enough to share your story and speak up and speak out.
Oh, I haven't said by what I was meaning to say is that I get a lot of love from my people, from my community, from the Israeli society, from Americans here as well, which is very nice because for me it feels like if there's any place to come and speak your mind and not to be and not be afraid, being lynched for what you say, is I would assume that it's the U.S.
Well, welcome to the Truth Table. That's why we're here.
Yes, feels good to be here.
All right. So, Tamer, now you're an artist, and I spoke with you a little bit offline about how your art is your activism. So after October 7th, you started an organization called the 8 Project. What is that about, and what made you start that organization, and what has been the response to that project?
So to answer that question, I'll go way back.
Okay, take us back.
The way I grew up. So I grew up in southeast Jerusalem in between very radical Muslim villages. I was part of that fight since I remember myself. For me, walking to school was with the knife, and you're about to get into a fight on daily basis. My friends get stabbed, you get beat, and once you see the radical dudes walking in groups, you're gonna run away or you're getting into a fight. So that was my childhood. And then I went to the IDF at the age of 18. I served almost 5 years. I was Special Ground Forces for 5 years. And when I got discharged at the age of almost 23, I moved to the state, and I started to get familiar with the whole PTSD world, which I started to get episodes myself. So I started to get introduced to the mental health world because of my experience in the military. And I started to create about that. I'm a painter. I paint. So everything I was painting about was how I feel as a soldier, as the way I grew up. And some of my work was some political, but it was not about... it raised a lot of conversations, but it was based on an experience of someone who lived that.
Did it also help you cope?
Yeah, very much, very much. It helped me cope. It helped me to keep going, and I got a lot of love, and obviously, of course, you get a lot of hate because you're not on the fence. You're literally choosing a side by the way you create, and so. When October 7 happened, everything got just much bigger, So I feel like I lived this fight, I lived this conflict since I was born. This war is not new to me. I've seen horrific stuff even before October 7. When October 7 happened, I was accidentally, I was in Israel. So I was in Israel already on October 2nd. I was with my 2 boys. When October 7 happened, I was volunteer with a nonprofit organization to recover dead bodies. I wanted to volunteer to put on my self-uniform, but because I don't do reserve duty, because I've been living in the U.S. for 20 years, I couldn't do that. No one will accept me right now with a weapon right now, so I volunteered to recover dead bodies. I was one of the first people who got into Kibbutz Be'eri, down south on October 8th. Let's put it that way. I've seen all the stuff that people denied. That's what I've seen in my eyes, and that's what I recovered. I've seen already on October 8, 9, and 10, how people are getting completely losing it from seeing all those horrific stuff. And I have to say something. When I volunteered to go down south, every person I know in Israel volunteered. Everyone did something because it was so big. It was so bad that everyone had in my surrounding to volunteer and help somehow.
They were moved.
Yeah, and when I went back to LA, I knew that I want to create about that. Obviously, this is what I do. I create about this world, and now everything got much bigger and crazier. And let's put it that way, the war got on steroids, you know, and so was my creation. And I started to work with a lot of survivors, you know, because the only people I wanted, like I got into that trauma as well. So the only people I wanted to hang with were people who were there. So we started to bring different survivors and soldiers families, the Nova Festival survivors, and people from the South to create with me in the studio. And that's how we created the 8 project. And the 8 project is mainly focused on healing and creators, mainly creators who suffer from trauma from that war. And we created that program that it's a 2-month program. It's an artist residency program where we bring a creator for 2 months. It's a combination of rehabilitation center and artist residency program in once. So we bring someone with a full passion for art, for example, and we making that person do art 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day to tell their story. And we create those projects in advance, of course. Like we prepare the project in advance. It's guided by psychiatrists and 2 therapists, of course, that walk them on daily basis, the whole process. So these 2 months of rehabilitation, doing your passion, is a very transformative experience. And it's completely changing life. And the reason I do that, it's because I feel like I've been living this trauma for so long, and now I have the tools and the resources to help those who were kind of surprised about that.
Yeah.
Put it that way. So this is the 8 Project. 8 Project is basically that initiative where we bring people from Israel to heal through their passion. And this program can be copied to any kind of an industry, to jewelry industry or music industry. And as long as we understand your passion, if we can make you pursuing your passion every day, all day, and we pay for it and we help you to do that, it's much easier to heal through your passion and not through something that you're not passionate about.
So you're helping people cope while also bringing awareness to the issue. So
exactly, and usually the work they do is a war base, but we are very focused on getting out of victimhood. Don't be a victim. Let's grow out of that. And we're focused on post-traumatic growth, which is PTG. And that's pretty much what the 8 Project is about.
Okay, so for Brandy and Tamer, talk to me about what it means to be Jewish in America these past 2 years. How has the war, the protests, the media impacted your life and your livelihood? Do you feel anti-Jewish hate on a day-to-day basis? And what does that look like? I'll start with you, Dr. Shufutinsky.
I think I think post October 7th, what I'd been working on and speaking about before actually came out on the table for everybody to see. So I wasn't, I have a son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter who live in Bat Yam in Israel. My oldest son served in the IDF many years back. He's back in the United States now. So we've been very aware of the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish bigotry that's been permeating and increasing in the United States, at least. I think post-October 7th, one of the things I saw is people surprised by the celebration of the massacre that happened here. I was not surprised. I was disgusted, but I wasn't surprised because those seeds had been planted for a number of years before. The seeds that were going to justify what happened on October 7th and in fact turn the butchers into celebrities, those seeds had been planted before. I think the outrage and the disgust comes from the complete ignoring of what Israel is and who Israeli people are. And not just were the Bedouins who opened their doors and risked their lives to save their fellow Israelis ignored, but the Bedouins who were also massacred and abducted were completely ignored. We saw just this continuous erasure. And in fact, I think that that's one of the main drivers of the people that try to boycott Israel and pressure elected officials and celebrities to not go. Because they know that once people go to Israel and see it, with their own eyes and speak to people, speak to Israelis, you know, with their and listen to them with their own ears, all of the lies that are being built in the United States will fall apart like a house of cards. As far as work, well, I work in education and national security. That's the program I direct. There is huge concern, not just with the anti-Jewish bigotry that's being institutionalized in our education system, and not just higher ed, K through 12, but which groups and communities are being used. The Black American community is being used. And I think, one, it shows how non-Black Americans view Black Americans as being very influential on culture, which we are. But it also shows a complete disregard for the futures of Black American kids. So all of these things that are being put into schools, all of these teach-ins on trying to teach the lie that Israel's an apartheid state or that Zionism is racism, is taking away from Black kids learning. It's taking away from not just learning about themselves and their communities and culture, but learning the basics like how to read. You look at any school district where you have the most activist teachers and union members and community organizations involved. Look at Chicago, look at Philly, look at Baltimore, look at the literacy rate. Look at the literacy rate for Black kids. New York. Wait a couple of months. We'll see what happens in November, but what's going to happen in the school system here?
Looks like, well, when you're banning books and you're saying, you know, controlling what people can consume, I'm sure that the literacy rate can't stand to benefit from that. So there's that. And also, Tamer, what's it been like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting.